Let's tell you about this now. The National Prosecuting Authority has been given the green light to accept donor funding for prosecution. The private donation will be directed towards prosecuting high-profile and complex cases. We're now joined by Paul O'Sullivan, forensic consultant, to get his views on this story. Thank you very much, Paul, for availing yourself this afternoon. So, reaction to this has been varied. Your position?
Well, you know, unfortunately, the National Prosecuting Authority are under-resourced. And the reason they're under-resourced is because they've been eviscerated for the better part of 10 or 12 years by the Zuma regime, and they were captured. And to a degree, there's certain elements of capture still there. So the amount of serious crime, and when I talk about serious crime, I'm not just talking about robberies and murders and stuff like that, but especially the white-collar crime, because during the period where Zuma was president, the country was robbed blind. The institutions owned by the state were brought to their knees, all of them. There's not one of them that is now functioning properly and making a profit. So to prosecute all those people is going to require vast resources. Now, in my opinion, there's nothing wrong with private funding. And by the way, the first private funding started way back when. In fact, it was a case I investigated in 1997 when I was in the police. And it involved a chap who was a bank manager at then NBS Bank in Kempton Park. And he was arrested for stealing, I think the amount was 375 million. And the state decided to prosecute, and he was, the prosecution was paid for by the Arbitration Foundation of South Africa. And they obviously did it at arm's length. What we can't have, though, is we can't have individuals deciding that somebody they want to be prosecuted and they must fund that. There must be a few degrees of separation between the funding and the actual prosecution itself. Otherwise, you end up with, bounty hunter type activity in the prosecution service. So, in my opinion, the funding of prosecutions by private individuals or by corporations should be done by somebody like the Arbitration Foundation or somebody like that, keeping a fund, keeping a pot there, and then the lawyers can be chosen from private practice. There are plenty of very dedicated and very skilled lawyers in private practice who are well able to prosecute some of these high-profile crimes. Obviously, it's important to make sure that the lawyers that do that prosecution aren't running with the foxes and hunting with the hounds, because some of the good lawyers out there are also defending criminals. And you can't have one person defending a criminal one day of the week and prosecuting a criminal the next day of the week. That would be a complete conflict of interest. So, providing they get all the checks and balances in place, I'm all in favour of it, and the sooner they roll it out, the better.
Let's talk about the bigger law enforcement ecosystem, because you've also got the courts, which are also complaining about a backlog in the system, right? So you've got these private funders, potential private funders, who may potentially plug the gap. But is that it?
I don't quite understand what you mean. It's not just a case of plugging the gap. It's a case of providing funding that will then fund senior counsel or junior counsel, depending on the type of case, who are in private practice to come in, and they will report to the National Prosecuting Authority. They can't be mavericks and do their own thing. And if that's allowed to happen, there's nothing wrong with that.
Paul O'Sullivan is a forensic consultant. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon.